Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Welcome back. You are listening to the Mari Mukunda show on Salam Media. So I've got Fiona Watson on the line, who is the Advocacy Director based in the UK for Survival International. It is World Humanitarian today, and we're going to learn more about their humanitarian work and what they do. Um, Fiona, good morning.
Good morning, Mariam.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, in lockdown.
Thank you. All right, so thank you for joining me. So, tell us about Survival International. We know that it's a global movement for tribal people's rights. Tell us more about it. When did it start, and what was the aim of it starting? What was the purpose of Survival International?
Yeah, well, we were founded just over 50 years ago in 1969, and that was because of the situation in Brazil, where very serious reports, credible reports were coming out of a policy of the then military dictatorship, which was to destroy tribal peoples and steal their land. This was particularly in the Amazon rainforest region. So when these reports came out, Survival was founded by a group of people who had worked in Brazil, and the aim was then to fight for these people's rights, to say that these peoples were contemporary peoples, which they are, and had just as much right as anybody to their lives, land, and livelihood. So from those early days in Brazil, we've since expanded our work in the last 50 years, and we're working in many countries, mainly in South America, parts of Africa, like the Congo Basin, East Africa, and Botswana, and also in parts of Asia, particularly India. And we are working with indigenous and tribal organizations and communities to defend their right to choose the way they wish to live, and to their lands, principally because if they don't have their lands, they will not survive as peoples, and also to provide a platform for them. So if any of your listeners or viewers goes onto our website, you will see we have a section called Tribal Voice, where we post up a lot of video messages that tribal peoples are sending us, which helps get their voice out there in their fight for their rights.
Hmm. So, tribal people are always depicted as savages or brutal or dangerous. I mean, we've seen that in the movies that we watch and the TV shows, and all they want to do is take you and capture you and roast you or whatever it is. And that's really not the case. I mean, they're human too, and they just want rights like everyone else. There also has been books. And you wrote this, there is this on your website about brutal savages. And what is survival doing to expose these writers and to set the record straight that tribal people just want rights?
Yeah, so I think that's a very important point that you raise, which is there's a lot of ignorance and racism against tribal peoples. They may, in some cases, live differently to us, but my experience of tribal peoples is that they are contemporary peoples. They're living now in the here and the now. And one of the things that I think is fantastic, there are several things. One is that they, by and large, live collectively. So they know and understand how to live in communities. So if you take people like, for example, the Bushmen or San peoples of Southern Africa, these are extremely egalitarian communities, where people are respected, men and women have an equal status. And the other key point, I think, about tribal peoples is that they live sustainably. They're extremely self-sufficient peoples. If their land rights are respected, they in fact don't need aid and packages. These are living, very viable societies, and they are the most fantastic conservationists. So as we are, on our planet discussing very serious issues like climate change and how it's already, we can see how it's affecting our environment and our way of life, I think these people hold the key, because this knowledge, they're zoologists, they're botanists, they've got a fantastic knowledge of medicinal plants. All this knowledge enables them to live well, but it also means that they are protecting or upholding very valuable biomes, whether it's the Kalahari Desert in Southern Africa or the Amazon and Congo rainforests. And we now know from the scientific evidence that standing rainforests around the world is extremely important for helping us tackle global warming and climate change. So these people, with their knowledge, are performing a great service for humanity, if you like, not just for their own group or tribe, but for humanity.
All right. Tell us about the campaigns and how Survival International has helped the tribal people.
Well, our campaigns are very varied. For example, we're working at the moment on uncontacted tribes. That is people who have no contact with national society. They're predominantly in the Amazon basin. Their lands are progressively being invaded. They're being killed. Their lands are being overrun by drug traffickers, loggers, mining companies. So if these people are to survive, because they don't have contact with national society, if they are to survive, it's really important that organizations like Survival speak up, tell the world what's happening, and lobby and campaign for their rights. We worked with the Kalahari Bushmen, the Ganarangui Bushman peoples of the Central Kalahari in Botswana, and we supported them to go to the High Court in Botswana. It became the longest legal case in Botswana history, but they won. And now, having been evicted from their lands in the Central Kalahari Game Reserve in Botswana, the High Court recognised that their right to go back there and recognise that it was their land. So that was a tremendous achievement for them, and Survival supported them in the court case and the campaign. Another campaign we have is against large conservation organisations. So where you have these very big organisations, like, for example, WWF, this is particularly a problem in Africa, actually, in the Congo Basin countries and in East Africa. Many of these big conservation organisations, which are predominantly run by white people, so it's a very colonial ideology, is that you go in there, you kick the people off the land whose ancestral land it is, who've lived there for thousands of years, who understand intimately how to manage that land. They're being kicked off in the name of conservation and being told these areas are pristine areas which are only for animals. This is totally wrong. It's a denial of their rights, but also it's a disservice, because these are the people who understand the environment and the ecology, and they should be listened to and be working in partnership with these organisations so long as their land rights are respected. And there's a big issue actually poaching. I mean, they're getting criminalised because a lot of these people are hunter-gatherer peoples. I mean, there are many hunter-gatherer peoples throughout the world, and particularly in Africa. And that, unfortunately, that way of life is looked down upon. And so they're discriminated. There's a lot of racism against them. But actually, if you think about the Kalahari, being a hunter-gatherer is a very intelligent way of being in that environment. Where your footprint is very light, and their survival techniques are fantastic.
Yeah. And how has the global pandemic impacted how Survival International runs and continues with their operations?
Yes, well, obviously it's extremely serious, and Survival works a lot in South America. And in Brazil, and as you know, Brazil is one of the countries with the highest rates of infection. And in fact, indigenous peoples in Brazil are proportionately the biggest group of people in Brazil affected by COVID-19 in the pandemic. And what we're doing is we are broadcasting. A lot of the indigenous people have set up their own fundraising initiatives to get medical supplies into their communities. So we've been supporting them through our social media to get their fundraising campaigns out for people to donate money. But we've also been lobbying the government and the organisations who have the duty, the responsibility, the constitutional obligation to provide proper healthcare to communities. So we're doing all that we can to draw attention to the fact where there are outbreaks and how the government, working with organisations in Brazil, pointing out that, for example, we know some government health teams have gone into indigenous territories in very remote areas and not quarantined properly. I mean, that's just crazy. That's a recipe for disaster. So we're doing all we can to draw attention to what's going on, but also to a very important issue in Brazil is that a lot of they think that many cases of coronavirus are being introduced by people who are invading indigenous territories. So that really shows that the government has to get a grip on the situation. unfortunately, the racist rhetoric of Jair Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, who is in denial about the pandemic, but also is encouraging invasion of indigenous territories, which have been ratified under the constitution, their rights, land rights recognized, but he doesn't care about the law. He's encouraging loggers, miners, all sorts of people to go in and invade, and they are a vector, if you like. They are transmitting, or very probably transmitting, coronavirus to some of these very isolated communities. So Survival is also drawing attention to that and campaigning for those communities who are desperately trying to defend their land. And in many cases, these land rights defenders, the indigenous people, are the only people, against invaders coming in heavily armed with guns. And very sadly, I mean, Brazil has one of the most violent societies at the moment. And last year, 24 land rights defenders, including 10 indigenous peoples, were murdered. So this is a very dangerous job. So Survival has been supporting the land rights defenders as well.
All right. It is World Humanitarian Day today. And what would you like people to know about Survival International?
Well, I'd like them to know that indigenous peoples and tribal peoples, we believe, are key for our future as a global planet, as a human family. And if you can support in any way, that's by campaigning, being an activist, participating in our letter writing campaigns, signing petitions, sharing our material on social media, donating to Indigenous people's projects. All of this information you can find on our website, www.survivalinternational.org, also on our Twitter and Facebook pages, which you can click onto from our website. Please get involved in any way. And I think, it's really important to remember that I think public opinion, we know from the past, whether it's campaigning against mining companies who've invaded indigenous people's land without their free, prior and informed consent, governments, anybody who's committing crimes against indigenous peoples, we can stop this. And we've had many successes over the years. Many large territories have been recognised, indigenous land rights have been recognised because of campaign work by the public all around the world. We are an international organisation, so please support us in any way. And it's not just about giving money, it's about being a voice.
And on the website, you make mention that you do not want any government help. Why is that?
That's because we want to maintain our independence. So we don't take any government money or any corporate money, because we need to be free to be able to criticize and campaign against governments. And if you accept money that comes from a corporation or a government, the chances are they might try to influence you and stop you from speaking out and speaking truth to the world, truth to power. So that's really important. We maintain our independence. So we're very reliant on donations from individual people who may give, $5 or $10 a year. But if more people do that, that numbers give us strength.
All right. So thank you so much for your time, Fiona. And hopefully people will take the information you've given us and run with it and support Survival International.
Thank you very much, Mariam, and thank you for having me on your program.
It's a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Fiona Watson, Survival Advocacy Director based in the UK for Survival International, founded in 1969 by a group of people appalled by the genocide of Amazon Indians, detailed in a Sunday Times expose. You can find more information on their website, www.survivalinternational.org. You can find out information on how you can support them as well. And like Fiona said, it's about the numbers. The more people report cases, the more people talk about it, the louder it will get, and hopefully more people can share this on their social platforms. Do the right thing, guys. And it is World Humanitarian Day, so take the step in doing something for the rest of humanity, because tribal people deserve their rights as well. Okay, we're going to take a break, but do stay with us. We will be right back.